history and dreams and everything in between. One evening in September 1961, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Norman Manley, picked up a frayed and faded federal flag that his wife, Edna Manley, had painted and wrapped it around the shoulders of his grandchild, Rachel, and told her, "Never forget this flag. Never forget this flag." Results were in. Jamaicans in the Federation, in a referendum, had voted to leave the West Indies Federation. I never forgot this flag because it is like if you do a search for it on the internet, you will get the most bizarre things. You will not get this real flag. You will get this from Wikipedia. They make T-shirts with it as a West Indian federal flag. This one, they sell keychains with it. But this is the real flag. The West Indies, the flag of the West Indies Federation. Now, it's like if probably one of the most significant political events in the Caribbean in my parents' generation had just vanished, just disappeared. But have a good look at the flag. What did Manley mean by never forget the flag? Was he telling Rachel, you must carry on the fight for federation? Or was he also talking, and I think he was, about the spirit of the flag, what the flag sort of made us feel, the sort of hope, optimism, the infinite horizon of possibilities. Because when the PNM won the election in 1956, and then the self-government and the promise of federation, my parents' generation was intoxicated, and people from all over the Caribbean came down to Trinidad to enlist in the federal government. And to mark the inauguration of the festival, in 1958, we held the first West Indies Festival of the Arts in a little elegant wooden amphitheater in the Botanical Gardens, where for the first time, Caribbean people were able to see each other's dances, hear each other's songs, and delight in what they shared. And my father, he put a flagpole in our front garden of the house, and he flew a full-size federal flag. And there were all sorts of interesting people that would just come in and out of the house. Beryl McBurney, the pioneer of dance, Carlisle Chang, the artist, the anthropologist, Dan Crowley, and new people, Derek Walcott, just from St. Lucia, settling into Trinidad, and Rex Nettleford from Jamaica, making his pilgrimage to the Little Carib, and Beryl McBurney. But what's that got to do with me? What's that got to do with Guel, the channel, the TV channel, 40 years later? Well, let's get something straight. This was the 1950s. People like my parents weren't supposed to mix with black people. A little white boy like me would not have had access to the cultural education that I was being afforded. Like sitting at the feet of the Grand Kurukai Orchestra from Upper Santa Cruz at Christmas time, with their flutes and their violins and so on. And the music just filling the house, the wooden walls and floor sort of vibrating with this sound that just, sent chills up my spine and filled me with a certainty that I would live with this music for my life. Or was it the Merrymaker Steel Band at carnival time in the backyard? Or was it John Buddy Williams in a sweaty and crowded little Carib with my father sitting in with clarinet every now and again? I never forget the first time I heard Attila 1934 classic, The Graf Zeppelin. I don't know if you know it, but it was sung to me by all people, the federal government's information officer, Willie Richardson, with a deep baritone voice. And the calypso has science, it has a magical portrayal of a historical and social event. It has intellect, history, culture all mixed together. I was being gifted with stuff that was going to live with me for the rest of my life. and inform any of the better things I did with my life. And at the same time, instill inside of me, hey, Carlisle Chang, painting the mural at the airport, the inherent nobility of man. Thank you, Rubideri. And so I really wanted to share what I felt and what I experienced. And at carnival time, I would be downside the stage with the anthropologist, Dan Crowley. And he would be in his wheelchair with his reel-to-reel tape recorder recording the speeches of the traditional mass and seeing Saldana and Bailey cross the street. And I thought that was a link to how I could share what I felt. And 20 years later, and for 30 years onwards, I would be there with a video camera, also recording speeches from traditional mass, the Minshaw's, the Jason Griffiths, and the Stephen Derricks. So it was like these would add to the 3,000 tape archive that Banyan has built, one of the largest archives of motion picture contemporary Caribbean culture. But then there was Emery Cook. Emery Cook settled in Trinidad in the 50s, and it is him we have to thank for live recordings of Little Carib, for catching Sparrow with Jean and Dinah. Yeah, when he won the crown in 56. And also for making what is still probably the best recording of live carnival on the road. He fascinated me. We were brought up with his records. And if anybody ever told me, oh, you were the video Emery Cook of your age, I'd die happy, you know? So Crowley, that's Dan Crowley, the anthropologist. When he left, he gave me his recorders and mics, and I would spend my teenage years sort of taking them apart, putting them back together, learning how this new technology worked. I mean, tape recording was pretty new in those days. And, oh, don't laugh. And in that one gesture, he planted a seed in me that, it just served me for the rest of my life and for my future career. Then came the referendum, and Williams, with his Trini mathematics, 1 from 10 is 0. We were on our own, no federation. And our poet laureate, the mighty Sparrow, lamented, sorry, no federation again. It's a big shame. After all that effort and energy, goodbye, everybody. Now it's only a memory. We failed miserably. So it was goodbye, everybody, and the world just fell apart, and people went their different ways. Flags came down, and some people committed suicide. Some people just sat in their houses and spent their gratuity till it ran out. It was a huge trauma for my parents' generation, and they wouldn't even speak of it sometimes. But history was being truncated, and it was being washed away like footsteps in the sand. Because at that time, even though we got excited about independence, many people felt that that was a consolation prize, because walls were being built around our dreams. And we were being corralled into electoral fodder for visionless politicians, contaminated by colonialism and inhibited by a deep self-contempt. As the Kaisonian says, good intention, but foreign education. So, Carlisle Chang designed the national flag and coat of arms. Pat Castani brushed off an anthem that he had composed for the Federation, changed a few words. It became the Trinidad and Tobago national anthem. So, August 31st, 1962, independence came, as well as television, same day. As our masters, our colonial masters left their administrative offices, our neo-colonial masters walked into our bedrooms and living rooms. Because instead of using this medium, or the most powerful medium of the time, to build a new nation, to bridge the gap between our colonial masks and our inner souls, to have us see ourselves and talk to ourselves, the Caribbean became the region in the world most inundated by US television. It is like in the film in 1989 that we made, The Dish Ran Away with the Spoon. It asks, what happens when you have to dream other people's dreams? Well, we had 1970. In 1971, there were young people in the hills as guerrillas being hunted down by Randolph Burroughs and shot. The banned publications list got longer and longer. But you don't kill the federal spirit. One of the greatest poets out of the 1970 revolution was Abdul Malik. And while he was under detention in Nelson Island, that's him there, one of the poems he wrote was called Motto Vision, in which he conjured up the father of Federation, T.A. Marichaud. I'll try and give you, my mouth is very dry, but I'll try and give you a little piece of it. And Marichaud was the stern-faced voice, rich in my ears in school, and he said, and we voices echoed, the West Indies must be West Indian. And I listened to Marichaud, like it's the first time I hear waves breaking on the shore. The West Indies must be West Indian. But Marichaud, Motto Vision rowboat, run aground in a federal funeral. So listen to what Malik is saying. He's not just saying that it's a political act, a political event, but it is also an existential one. It was like the first time he heard waves breaking on the shore. So in 1974, we formed the Trinidad and Tobago Television Workshop, had a series called Banyan that went on the air, satirical looks at some of our institutions. It got so satirical we were banned in 1976. 1976, against all public outcry, a minister of government demanded the destruction and demolition of Carlyle's magical piece looking at our history of the region and our futures and our vision, The Inherent Nobility of Man. If you want an example of what the state of the nation was and of our leaders, that's a good one, but it continues even to today. In 1977, we did the Anglophone Caribbean's first television soap opera, Who the Cap Fits. There's a scene in one of the early episodes. Mother is looking at the television and she sees her son. And she turns to her husband and says, Tio, look at your son. What he's doing inside the People TV. The People TV, not her TV. He had no business in there. That's the white People TV. And over the next 35 years, Banyan produced more than 400 programs. But it is with the question that the Cap mother asked that we have always engaged. And so when in 1984, we were granted a series called Guel, which was a sort of cultural magazine program on Thursday night. Families gathered all their children together and used to sit down and watch Guel. Guel was the first program that had cultural events from all the different traditions of the country in one program. You know, previously on our television, you had a talent show for Indians and a talent show for Creoles. But this had everybody in it. And then also we used our language from Creole to standard English. We didn't dress up in a jacket and tie, which was you had to do if you went on television. We were doing a sort of seditious dance with the audience every Thursday night. And it was experimenting with the kind of calypso, chutney type television. And we thought that in that half an hour, we would do what state television was supposed to do all day since independence. That was our challenge. And I guess the real challenge came when in 1992 we got a license for a community television station, but it took us 12 years to get the stuff together to actually be able to activate it. And so we started Guel in 2004. And let me just tell you some of the complaints we got in the first 2 years or so. We'd get a telephone call saying, listen, I haven't cooked dinner for my children. I'm watching Guel. I missed my plane to New York because I'm watching Guel. I had to walk backwards out of my house because I didn't want to miss what was going on in Guel. A fellow called us from Tobago, real angry. Tobago wasn't getting Guel in those days. He said, my wife went to Trinidad. She's not coming back. She's watching Guel. What are you doing? On Sundays in the first couple years, we were so burnt out by making 16 hours of original programming every day. We just took a camera and pointed on the street and put a crawl saying, why don't you turn off your television and spend some time with your family, because that is what we at Guel are doing. No. People come down in front of the station, they put up placards, they did drama, they played games and sports, and they did all sorts of things. What made people react that way? Was it because for the first time they didn't have to watch television through a cultural filter, decoding the images? Was it that they felt it spoke to them directly and they spoke to it? Was it that they were hearing the sound of the waves breaking on the land for the first time? Because, you see, whether it is Sparrow lamenting the demise of the Federation, or Malik quoting Mauricio's Motorvision, or Stalin in Caribbean Man wondering what the Rastas know that the politicians don't about West Indian unity, or Rudder rallying around the West Indies. And it's all history that vanished like a dream, like those that you forget when the day comes. And I tell you, I never forget this flag because I never forget this flag because its optimism and hope gives me courage. And when I touch it, I feel the giants in whose footprints I dare to tread. And I think each of us has some little touchstone or talisman or something deep inside of us, if we look for it, that would make us realize the destiny that we are destined to realize. So I think that for the sake of your wholeness and the wholeness of the region, we have to remember Manly's words. When out of the depths of his despair, he passed his mission on to his granddaughter, on to me, on to you, on to our children and grandchildren. Never forget this flag. So I leave you with just 3 words from T.A. Mauricio. Educate, agitate, federate. Thank you very much.